Hi everyone, this is Aggie from the Green Collective. We're going to be starting the next session from 11 o'clock to 12 p.m. And we'll be discussing the topic of plastic. Okay, so what is the Green Collective? Well, we're a platform that supports local sustainable businesses. We are located at Funan and we're also online. Hi, I'm Aggie. I can finally see everyone. Basically, we're also part of the Delegate Virtual Green Christmas Market, and we have a booth. You can come and visit us. We are in the home and gifting section, so do drop by and say hi. We're also online at www.thegreencollective.sg. So today we're talking about plastic, which is a huge hot topic now. It's risen up the environmental agenda. Plastic is everywhere. It's in our homes, offices, part of our daily lives, basically. But as you all know, it's something that there's an issue about it that we can't ignore, and that's its environmental impact. Even though there's no denying that it's a very transformative material. So today we have 3 of our partner brands, or khakis as we call them. I'm going to be introducing each of them. So when I introduce you, please give a wave so we all know who you are. So firstly, we have Melissa. You might know her as Bamboo Straw Girl. She runs Bamboo Straw Girl, a social enterprise where she wants to start different conversations about the urgency of environmental action through something as simple as a bamboo straw and other lifestyle items. Hi, Melissa, welcome. Next, we have Sangeeta Melissa. Hello there. So Sangeeta runs the Eco Statement. So she creates sustainable products. So you might have seen them at the Green Collective. They are these Erica palm leaf plates and bowls, homeware. And she's also an educator. So she runs workshops and talks on how to be sustainable. And last but not least, we have Hannah Angsana. Hi, Hannah, and she's one half of a nerd store, which through which she advocates the preservation of authentic handmade batik and tenon as cultural heritage and source of income for the artisans in Indonesia. And she wants us to stop wearing plastic. So a bit more about that later. But yeah, let's get into the discussion. And the reason why we wanted to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly is basically plastic is getting a bad rap at the moment. But we wanted to actually share a bit about what are the benefits of using plastic or having plastic in our lives. And I did a bit of research. And in fact, from 1950 to 2015, we have actually produced 7.8 billion tons of plastic, which is a huge number. That's basically more than the number of people on this planet. And so my question is, why has this increase been so, it's been so drastic? That I'm surely there's a reason for this. And so I'm going to put this question to all of you ladies, but Sangeeta, why and when did plastic become so, so big?
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, so when did plastic start being used, or why did it become popular? So the mass production of plastic started around 1940s, 1950s, and since then it has grown a lot. And I think there are, we all talk about the bad. We have only heard the bad aspects of plastics, but plastics kind of revolutionized some of the sectors, and that is why then the whole increase, the boom in plastic industry started. And a couple of sectors which have been really helped by plastic is the medical field and the transportation field. So if in the healthcare sector, especially, the medical devices which were made by plastic, which are because of the good aspects of plastic. It's durable, it's versatile, and it is hypoallergenic. So it really helped the healthcare sector with creating sterile equipment, creating devices which are not allergic to the patients, etc. And we still see that in the healthcare sector. Everything is plastic. The equipments are covered in plastic, sterile plastic. And the other industry which was really helped because of plastics is the transport industry. So some of the interesting facts from the transportation industry: plastic has really improved the transportation efficiency by reducing the packaging as well as the product mass compared to other materials like metal or glass, etc. And the shipping has really become less costly because of plastic, because it's a lighter weight material. Vehicles themselves, which were heavy before plastics came into being, the vehicle weight itself has gone down a lot, and that has improved the efficiency. And as a result, about 10% of the weight and 50% of the volume of a typical US vehicle today is actually plastic. And back in the 1960s, when plastics was just coming into being, the vehicles had less than about 20 pounds of plastic. So these are two main industries which have been really helped by the emergence of plastic, and they call it as the miracle material.
Yeah, I mean, we can see it being used actually a lot now, especially during COVID with the PPEs and the masks and things like that. And you mentioned also packaging as well. So I'm going to ask Mal, because it's also it's contradictory as well, because we want packaging to protect the food that we eat, but then it's also causing an environmental impact as well.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about food packaging quite a bit also, because as zero waste advocates, we usually like to pitch, why don't we buy package free and things like that. But especially in Singapore, where a lot of food is imported, and I read a bit about food waste or food loss and how plastic can prevent that. Actually, food waste has a significantly higher environmental impact, especially in carbon footprint, than packaging waste. So sometimes plastic packaging might be necessary with certain foods that we import to prevent the worst of two evils, which would be food waste. Plastic, I guess, it's everybody knows like what a good packaging material is, because it's lightweight, it's durable, it's used correctly. I think it is not as bad as sometimes it is made out to sound to be. I think also there is a need to choose between single-use and reusable plastics sometimes. So that, I think, is another argument that we can talk about.
Yeah, we'll definitely go into that later when we talk about the solutions. But Hannah, you were talking about earlier wanting to stop wearing plastic. Could you explain a bit more about that? Because a lot of people don't realize that plastic is actually in our clothing.
Right. So I guess echoing through, like adding to what Sangeeta and Mel already said, that basically plastic has a lot of good in it, right? So one of the things that is interesting to mention, if you watch this Netflix show about plastic, about fast fashion, there's this portion that talks about the history of swimwear and how people used to wear wool to go swimming, and how impractical it is, and also quite dangerous, because it gets heavy very easily. But plastic is actually a solution to that. And I suppose this kind of highlights the fact that what plastic can do necessarily supports innovation in clothing, in medical healthcare, transportation, as well as in packaging. And don't forget that if you're vegan, vegan leather is the main material for vegan leather is plastic. There's also like the mushroom equivalent. I mean, there are a lot of things that are currently being produced, but plastic is probably the easiest way to create vegan leather, right? That's one of the ways. But that aside, I guess we'll talk about it later on how we've become part of the problem in wearing plastic.
Yeah, I found some statistics. So apparently, this was in 2016. Actually, 65% of all fibers produced globally is actually synthetic. So you have your polyester, your nylon, your acrylic, and you were mentioning about swimwear. So I think we had a discussion earlier. One of our partner brands were saying that if you wear not a t-shirt, a piece of swimwear made from t-shirt material or cotton, it's not going to look good. You're going to look like a mess when you come out of the water. So I suppose there's a balance there. Yeah, I mean, if we talk about, we covered like most of the benefits of plastics, but what are the bad things? I mean, you hear it every day in the media. There's a lot of information out there. Mel, I know that if I got this number right, through Bamboo Straw Girl, you've replaced basically 3 million disposable straws. And you started off quite early in this business, I think about 5 years already, Mel. So what made you decide, okay, something needs to be done? So what are the problems that you saw in terms of plastic being used?
So at the beginning, when I guess what I would call like my green awakening was when I went hiking a lot with my friends, and we would go camping next to the river. And a lot of times, because coming from the city, we are not so used to being so deep in nature. So we would always go to 7-Eleven and bring a lot of, we would tap out a lot of snacks and stuff. And it was actually a picture that my friend took of all of us around the campfire. And we had like so many 7-Eleven plastic bags around us of all our snacks. And at the end of that night, when my friend showed me the picture as we were clearing up the trash to make sure that we're not leaving any trace behind, I looked at the picture and he said, oh, it's so nice, so romantic, it's like a movie. But when I looked at it, all I could see was all the plastic bags and how ugly it was and how out of place it was. And as we were clearing up all of the trash, it just made me worry that we were leaving something behind, and how used we were to just using so much single-use disposables that all our snacks were like coming in individual plastic packaging and things like that. So I wanted to start a conversation, and my solution to that was, why don't I start with something that a lot of people were using but not thinking about? And I think everybody is familiar now with reusable straws. So this was before the whole straw movement took off, which was really very interesting to watch. I think also recently I saw a few statistics and a few movies that really made me, even for somebody who is already aware, it made me shocked at how serious the problem was. The WWF did a study recently that said that people were consuming like a credit card size of plastic every week, and that would be like in the air, in the water, in the seafood that we eat. And it's something that I didn't, we can avoid all the single-use plastic we want when we go out to tapao food, or to be conscious with our plastic use. But these are things that we are breathing it and we can't stop it. You can't just not breathe. Also, I saw a movie where I think it said like 90% of seabirds have plastic in their stomachs now, as compared to the percentage has increased really exponentially since they started to do the studies on seabirds. So at the current point, I think they said it's like almost all seabirds have plastic in their stomachs, no matter where in the world. So that was also quite shocking to me, because they opened up the stomach of a small seabird. It's like a fledgling seabird, so it hasn't even lived very long. It's only been like alive and flying around for like few months. And when they opened its stomach, it was full of like random plastic bits, not just small ones, but pretty significant size pieces as well, like pen caps. And this bird is like somewhere far off, not even close to a coastal city. So it's pretty crazy how all this plastic has somehow found its way into the stomachs of seabirds so far away.
Yeah, animals in general, they can't distinguish between what is food and what is plastic. I'm sure all of you might have seen, like, there's this great Pacific garbage patch which is floating in the ocean, and apparently that's not the only one. There are 5 of these in the world floating around, and they're probably being eaten by ocean animals, birds as well. And the scary thing is that it's actually traveling up the food chain, so it's most likely going to impact us. But there's a lot of people, you might have seen this on the internet through discussions, or just feedback from friends, or memes going around where people are saying, hey, wait a minute, we're in Singapore. This doesn't affect me. We don't litter. We've got people who pick up our trash. we have such a good system, why should I care? I mean, even if you, like Mel, you were saying, with a turtle with a plastic bag around its body, right, being trapped. To someone who's in Singapore, they'll probably be thinking, well, I keep my plastic bags under the sink. It doesn't have to. It won't affect me. It's not. I don't throw it in the sea. And you see also, I would say, a lot of trash that you see on the beach. Some of it is from neighboring countries. So, what would you say to someone who is saying, "Yeah, I don't care. This is not for me. I'm not affected. Singapore's not affected. We're doing a good job anyway." Sangeeta, what do you think?
That's a good point that you raised, Aggie. I do hear it a lot when people say that the Singapore waste management is so efficient that none of the plastic would be leaking out into the Singapore seas, and because of us. Two things that I want to highlight here: that yes, Singapore management, the waste management is really very good and it's really very efficient. But what people don't realize is the amount of waste that we throw out. And just because we have such an efficient waste management system, we are such a small country, and we create so much of waste. So if you look at the statistics of NEA, if you look at 2018 or 2019 statistics, the amount of waste that we have generated, and of that is about 930 tons of plastic waste is generated in Singapore.
Wow, that's a lot, yeah.
So that amount of plastic, and people should also realize that when plastic is created, it is created from the petrochemicals. So which means you're using fossil fuels to create this material. And yes, the material is very good. The material has its good properties, but it is those single-use plastics, that single-use disposables that we are using, and that we use them even without thinking. We just use it once and throw it away. That is again a big chunk of that 930 tons of plastic that is created. So that is something which we need to really think about, that how are we behaving with that material? How are we using that material? And plus, that material is created from a non-renewable resource, fossil fuels. These fossil fuels, which are one of the biggest culprits for the larger topic of climate change and
And if I can jump in on that, Sangeeta, that's an excellent point brought, because like, gotta ask yourself if Singapore, don't make this Singapore's problem, right? Like, if Singapore is doing such a good job in managing your waste, what does it say about you, right? Because like clothes is one of those things that don't just get incinerated with everything else. And I guess some things, it's probably a small thing, but in comparison to the larger waste, plastic waste problem, but clothes that are made of plastics will shed microplastics. Again, Singapore does a good job in making sure that it doesn't enter into our food system, like the microplastics. But where does it go then? Like, it doesn't mean that everything just gets incinerated and then it's not our problem anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Because when we throw something away doesn't mean like it disappears. Yeah, it has to go somewhere, right? Yeah. So where is that somewhere? And Hannah, you were mentioning microplastics, because now we're learning that microplastics is actually literally everywhere. It's not plastic. When we talk about plastics, it's not just about the plastic netting that traps the fish or the seals. But it's these tiny little plastics that are in our system.
Yeah, I mentioned this before. This is like a little bit off topic, I guess, but like we used to have skincare that has micro beads in it, and it's so cool because you can do scrubs. But we forget again that it's literally plastic that you're just throwing down the drain, like tiny bits of plastics, and then that's the thing that may not be caught in. And then that's what goes again into the ocean, and if not the landfill, and yeah, it's and also of course our clothes that are made of like polyester and all that, it will shed microplastics whenever we use it, And then so you have things that so I know Mel has this like a bag that you put your laundry in to catch all like the the microplastic fibers to make sure that it doesn't get into the waste water system. So but yes, I guess these are things that we don't think about, but definitely once you realize it, you do some reading on it, realize that actually we really generate a lot of waste at a personal level.
Yeah, we're definitely learning a lot of new things about microplastics. I mean, just recently we heard that they've discovered it at the top of near the top of Mount Everest, and apparently it's now also at the bottom of the ocean. So in Australia, they discovered 14.4 million tons of it at the bottom of the ocean, and it's 25 times higher than it was expected to be. So there are these unknowns, but as we find more information, more data about it, then we begin to realize, okay, we need to do something about it. I think in Malaysia, they even found microplastic bits in the colon. So you can see that we are not immune to microplastic. It's there, but what are we gonna do about it? Is removing plastic from the oceans the way to go? Is that the silver bullet? Anybody? Do we know? So I mean, there are several options. I mean, if we talk about the solutions, there are several options that we could look at substituting. I mean, Sangeeta, you have your areca palm leaf plates. A lot of people say, okay, let's substitute plastic with alternatives. What are these alternatives, and are they the best? Because we've heard of biodegradable plastic. Does that work? Yeah, Sangeeta.
So yeah, so there are lots of alternatives that are coming into the market now: biodegradable plastics, compostable plastics, oxo-biodegradable plastics, etc. Yeah. So I mean, it's good that people are finding alternatives and looking at different risks to make the plastics, and many of them are plant-based. But what we need to be careful about using these biodegradable plastics is that these biodegradable plastics will biodegrade only in certain industrial conditions. It is not that you use that and you think that, okay, the problem goes away, I'm throwing it away just because it is biodegradable, it will go into the nature and biodegrade. No, that doesn't happen. It still stays in the nature as a plastic, and it will break down into microplastics. So it will not break down into its natural carbon and hydrogen. It will break down into microplastics, which is as harmful as plastic. And I don't know if it is biodegradable plastic, and if it is made from plants, and then you are again farming for those plants to make these plastics, which means you're using that land use which should have been used for something else, which was a forest has been cleared out and used for creating these biodegradable plastics. So again, we are getting into that whole vicious cycle. We have to be very careful and read the labels. What do they say? And if it is a biodegradable plastic, if we look at Singapore context, we don't have an industrial composting facility yet. So again, it will be incinerated. Compostable, there are compostable solutions. So those are which are made from natural resources, and plus which made from a waste from an industry is taken and converted into something else. And it can be used. So for example, bagas is one of the solutions which is available, which is made from the waste of sugarcane. So, once you take out the juice of sugarcane, the waste fiber that is remaining, it is generated into pulp and then created into takeaway boxes and cutlery, etc. So then, yes, those don't contain those harmful chemicals. They are natural, and then even if they go into the nature, into the seawater, or if they remain in the land, they will be biodegradable. They are biodegraded into the natural components. Yeah, so same with the areca palm leaf that we have. It is a waste of a plantation. So it's a dried leaf which would have gone waste, which is actually collected and converted into cutlery and takeaway boxes, etc. So if I have a home composting system and I put it into my home compost, it completely biodegrades and I can use it for my plants, for gardens, etc. So
Interesting.
about what we are using.
Right. So, would you say then that it really depends on where you're living? So in Singapore, what would you recommend for some an average person?
So, I mean, reusables is the best way to go in Singapore. Um,
Mm,
and because we still don't have the industrial, we don't have the structural solutions for biodegrading material or composting facilities, etc. But if you have, but of course, you can't have reusables in every kind of situation, every kind of scenario. And if you really need to use disposables, then you need to look at what you are buying. And just because the label says it is biodegradable, and then you are like conscience free that, oh, I bought a biodegradable material. Go into the details of it. What does it say? And if it is
yeah.
compostable, so the difference between compostable and biodegradable is very important. If it says it is home compostable, that is the best solution, because it can be home composted, and nowadays many people are doing composting at home. So or you can give it to community composting places, which will be happy to take these materials because they can add it to their community composting facility.
Right, great tips, Sangeeta. Yeah, it's interesting how you say that it's very important to, when you look at the alternatives, that you realize what's the end point for that particular item. Because I remember there was this piece of news, I think it was BBC, and they were speaking to the son of the man who invented the plastic bag. So this guy invented it in the 1950s, and actually he invented the plastic bag because he saw it as an alternative to paper bags. And at that point of time, paper bags, the impact was people were cutting down trees, and that was an issue back then. But now it's become so proliferant that it's now become a problem in itself. So I guess what you're trying to say is that when you do come up with an innovation, you have to prioritize sustainability as well, right? Yeah. So one of the things that people think about when they think about plastic environmental impacts, they're probably thinking of a solution of, hey, let's recycle plastics. We're doing that in Singapore. But Sangeeta mentioned that in Singapore, we only recycle 4%. But is there a way to actually improve on that? Melissa, do you have any thoughts on that? You're on mute.
I know, I just realized. Okay, so yeah, like Sangeeta mentioned, reuse is the best solution for any form of any material, not even just plastic, but if we can reuse something, it's always the best. A lot of people, and if you recall, last year there was this campaign by a bank that said like recycle more, waste less, and I really felt quite annoyed at this slogan, because recycle more, waste less recycle more shouldn't be the message that we are sending out. Recycling is not the go-to, especially because plastic, if we're talking about plastic, it degrades every time we recycle it. So not every material should be handled the same way. I believe glass doesn't degrade as you recycle it, if I'm not wrong, but plastic does. So if you were to recycle a high quality or hard plastic, it will eventually not be able to recycle. So you can't infinitely recycle plastic. So that's one thing. Also, on the topic of like how we're using materials, I think now with the reuse, I think more people are getting on board the let's reuse, and they're not looking at recycle as the first solution. But I think with the reuse solution, we are actually going back to solutions that we had before, where we're using, for example, tingkats, or we are using our reusable container rather than taking plastic packaging. So I think that's a good thing. And overall, there has to be a mindset shift, which I think we've seen a bit of in the past 2 years. So hopefully there's more of that there's a mindset shift towards it's not difficult to make a first step, and that first step or the steps that we take don't need to be perfect. So if we do need to opt for packaging, yes, we can consider like, is this packaging truly the best? Is it just greenwashing by calling it compostable or biodegradable, when actually in the end it's not going to have much difference in terms of carbon footprint, for example.
Yeah, I think with recycling, there's been a lot of confusion and mixed messages as well on what can be recycled. I mean, I was taught like, okay, if you have that triangle with the arrows, that's it. You can recycle. And we used to always like throw it in the bin. And I like your point about the fact that we always have recycle more campaigns, because fun fact here, or I provide an anecdote. So my son's school, they had a recycling competition. So what happened with the boys is, because they wanted to win the prize, they literally just drank a lot of plastic bottle drinks just to get the prize, which I thought really defeated the purpose. So you're right, Mel. It does happen. I think we need to make that switch. And speaking of recycling, Hannah, can we recycle clothes?
I think it's a very interesting question, but we don't have enough time to talk about the whole detail. But I guess in short,
time.
well, no, I won't go into too much detail. But okay, I guess like if you look at if we all look at our labels, right? Most of the time, clothes nowadays are not just like one single material. A lot of times it's blended, and you probably notice when plastic is contaminated, it's not exactly possible to, first it's very impractical to try and clean it up first to make it pure again before it gets into recycling. So which means that a lot of times when plastic is contaminated, it just gets chucked. Clothes are more interesting because you probably most likely just don't recycle it. There's no way for them to sort through every single piece to determine like what material is this recyclable or not. And again, the impracticality of doing that. I was looking for the title of it. I think there's a film called The True Cost. It's on YouTube that tells you like what happens to clothes at like end of life. And of course, again, the concerning bit is not just the fact that clothes are not recyclable, but we keep dumping more and more fast fashion into the recycling bin and like going to donate it into the, like basically like, again, all these things that form part of the, like, oh yeah, sure, yes, I have this, I got this secondhand, which is great, right? If I have the secondhand, that's like you being part of the solution, because in the first place, you're not buying new fast fashion clothes. But on the other hand, who are these people who keep throwing things into the into the pile, right? That like if you first buy someone would have to do it first. Like someone buys that $5 top that is made of polyester, and it is necessarily cheap because the material doesn't cost that much and doesn't take that much time to make, which is cool. Like that, again, it's cool that you can do things so cheaply nowadays. But on the other hand, at what cost, right? Like you make so much, you'll throw so much. It's like it's like with anything. And yeah, no, on that. So the short answer is no, we don't recycle plastic. But there are many. But there are recycled. Not to end on a doom and gloom. There are clothes made of recycled plastic, right? And back to that, like there's a good brand in the Green Collective. Go and check it out. That not mine. That does that makes swimwear again out of recycled plastic. It's a whole process. Yes, Sangeeta.
I'm going to jump in. Yes, recycling. Most of the stuff that we have put in blue bin may not be recycled, or it doesn't have that much. But what I want to emphasize here is, just because it is not recycling, people should not recycle. You should not contaminate the blue bin. You should be still practicing good recycling habits, so that even if now structurally it is not possible to recycle those compounds, but later on we might have technology, we might have innovations which will be able to recycle things that we are throwing into the recycle bin. So the proper best practices of recycling should still be followed. That's what I feel. Yeah, and the clothes cannot be put in the blue bin. NEA says don't put clothes, don't put plants into the blue bin. It has to go for donation.
Styrofoam, for goodness sake. I just saw another one, like I was trying to throw a bunch of cardboard boxes. Now like, why is this bin again occupied with styrofoam boxes? It's just madness. And I guess to add to that, the even better solution to recycling is, if you can, upcycle something, right? Something that's like that's supposed to be waste, you can make it into, so Mel mentioned earlier on that usually when you recycle, it degrades in value, but upcycling is the reverse, where you take something that would have been trash and make it into something better. Mel does that with all the with all the fabric that she comes across, that her makers come across, and like, okay, make it into something, and then make it something beautiful again, and that's admirable. And I feel bad because she because Mel, I mean, it's not a secret, right? Like Mel makes her clothes from in Indonesia, and so it's like my people who go and generate a lot of times, like, so like batik, just mentioning batik here, that is made as uniform, and a lot of times it's cheaper to make with the God knows what material fabric to make into like the print, the batik prints, and I mean, and usually, of course, they'll mass produce, and then when they mass produce something to go fast, they will cut, and then there'll be a lot of offcuts, and these offcuts, these little bits, are the ones that, again, the dye, the fabric, and everything just goes down into the waste. And I don't know, Mel, is that challenging? Do you get stares from your makers when you first ask them, hey, these things that you want to throw, can you make it into something?
Yeah, so at first I tried to work in Singapore, in Little India, along the Little India row. There's a lot of shops that do alteration for the saris. And actually, I got the most pushback from them. They're like, no, we throw it away. And I'm like, but I just need to help you clear your trash. And they're like, no, we are throwing it away, because it's apparently too much effort to gather all the scraps from their floor. And they would rather just really sweep it into general trash than keep it from me. So they were like, no. I did find one lady to work with, but eventually she said that it was too troublesome or something to keep it. So eventually, when I started to work in Indonesia, a lot of my makers, they actually do make uniforms. And so that's where quite a bit of the offcuts come from. And you would notice like the familiar patterns here and there when they do turn up. So I think they were more open to it. They did have like bags and bags of them. They already had the habit of sewing them into bigger cloths. So that was a good thing, that they would sew them into bigger cloths and then like see what they're going to do with it. So it was good to see that there was already that habit of reducing waste in the village where I work. And so when we started to make it into pouches, I think it was something that they were on board with right from the start. They were like, yes, we can use our waste, which is a good thing.
It's not a Zoom session if nobody starts talking when they're on mute.
That's true.
Sorry. So to add to that, I guess it probably highlights the point as well that maybe when you're closer to the production site, you're more aware that we are generating this much. But whereas for us in Singapore, because we don't really produce clothes ourselves, or like a lot of things we don't create ourselves, we seem to be removed from the problem. But I guess it's good that we have the opportunity to gain more consciousness that as well, we can do better with how we get rid of our things. Back to you, Aggie.
Yeah, good. Yeah, my internet connection just broke up. Thank you. Actually, some good points were raised just now about the feel-good factor of recycling, but Sangeeta did mention, which I feel is really important, is that the action of recycling actually reinforces the environmental awareness, I believe. So when Hannah actually, and Mel, you were talking about the huge amounts of waste, textile waste that you encountered, like in Little India or actually anywhere that you source your materials. So my question is, how then do we actually number one, do we reboot the system? And number two, how do we do that? And actually, is it plastics the problem, or is it actually us? Because we're the ones who've created it. Hannah, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So it's like when we're talking to Aggie, planning this talk, we're like, okay, so let's talk about the good, and then we'll talk about the bad, and then what's the ugly? It's like, Aggie, the ugly is us. We are the ones who are like, us and our practices. I'm guilty as well, right? Like I do shop online, so I am guilty as well. Like whenever Like when you have packages, and so sometimes you buy a few things, you think it will come in one packaging, but no, it's not, because it's year is 2020. Everybody combines, like nobody combines ship anymore. Like there's no centralized location. Well, I mean, if there's a centralized location, someone ships it there. So when you buy 5 items, you get 5 plastic bags. So I mean, you get 5 poly mailers. That's horrible, but it's something to work on, right? Every time I guess I think I'm definitely a believer that when you want to start change, you have to start like bit by bit. Like you start with what you can do, what you can do without. So for example, because of all these bloody poly mailers that I keep getting, big and small, I started using those as plastic, as the bin liner, like the plastic they use to line your trash bin. So that's one. But I mean, everybody will have their own variation of what to do. I know Mel doesn't have a bin. Sangeeta, is plastic allowed in your house?
No, plastic is not allowed. Yes. So I have bin liners. I use newspaper. I still get newspaper. I am still old fashioned. I cannot read a digital newspaper yet. So I still get my newspaper. And I use that newspaper to line my bins. And and the dry waste is happy with those newspaper lining. But of course, wet waste, we need to use plastic. And that is something that is again, again, NEA and government has said bag your trash, and that is the biggest reason that we need plastic bags, and that is the biggest reason that people hoard plastic bags, from supermarkets, because the reason is that you need that plastic bag to line your bin. Now, one way it is good from a carbon footprint point of view, that you are using that single-use plastic. It's used twice. One is to carry your shopping, and another is to bag your waste. But the problem comes when, again, it is us who create the problem when we start hoarding those plastic bags, which we actually don't need. So probably you could have carried your grocery in 2 or 3 bags, but we end up taking 10 bags or 15 bags, and you have this pile of bags lying.
Gotta double bag all the fish and the meat, man.
Separate the frozen, separate the dry. Like, just put it into one bag. Why do you need to separate? Yeah.
Yeah, and I get stared at all the time by the cashier. It was like, oh, but it's wet. I'm like, yeah, but I can wipe it. I'm like, it's okay. Just put it together.
The cashier is following the SOP that they have. No, they have been taught this is the SOP that you have to follow. Bag the wet separate, bag the dry separate. So that is where I think the businesses also have to play a part now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here and ask Mal. So we've talked about Hannah and Sangeeta have talked about the consumer being a problem, but what about manufacturers? What do you think they can do, Mal?
Okay, well, I guess for manufacturers, it is a little bit difficult to consider how they can reduce plastic in their packaging, because I understand it is, like we said, it's the cheapest, most lightweight, most durable. It's not going to get damaged in transit and stuff. But I guess for considering whether they can use recycled plastics, or considering whether they can reduce the packaging in some way. For example, we don't need to bag it several times before it goes into the box. Yeah, so I think for manufacturers, it's a balance also of making it efficient for shipping. For example, a square package versus a round one, or you don't want something that is very sort of a weird shape. You want it to be squarish so that it packs well when you ship. So I know that for manufacturers, there's a lot more to consider where they do plan their packaging. But I think we can all agree, and I think we have seen in the past few years that a lot of packaging is really, really unnecessary, and it's just creating more work in the end for, like, okay, now I've got the packaging, now how do I reuse or recycle or like deal with this packaging? And I guess as consumers, talking about it more, or supporting the brands that are more conscious with their packaging would send a good message across also.
I think also not just packaging, but product design in general. I mean, Hannah was talking about plastic in clothing and how her brand actually uses just natural materials as well. Okay, I'm just looking at the time. It's 11:46 now, and we've got about 10 minutes for some questions or comments. Do plot them down in the Q&A section, but I do see some comments in the chat. Woon says, nowhere is safe. Yeah, so that, yeah, that's true. But in fact, I think there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. I think it's still a new topic. Sangeeta, you might want to chime in, but yeah, I think there's still a lot of research that has to be done on the impact on human health of microplastics. Someone commented, I recommend to watch the Story of Plastic documentary, and she's dropped some links in the chat group. Let me see, Q&A. Oh, okay, Andrea, she said, talking about the plastics issue, the structural problem is massive, plastic production as well. How to make industries stop to produce and export these nefarious ways of unnecessarily packaging and eradicating dependence, which they made us to believe on a. So how do we change this? Anybody?
I guess one is there has to be some kind of a regulation and legislation that should come in. And I think Singapore is kind of looking at the extended producer responsibility, the EPR that would be implemented, which was supposed to be implemented this year, 2020, but because of COVID, kind of delayed it to 2021. So I think those kind of regulations and legislations will be helpful, where industries, manufacturers, businesses are responsible for the kind of waste they are generating. So they are not just creating their product and packaging, but they are also responsible for the end of life of the product and the packaging. So I guess that should, I mean, we won't see immediate effects, of course, but once these regulations and legislations come into play, hopefully in a few years' time, we will see some change happen. I'm so sorry, I also have another little guest.
Oh, that's all right. She can join in the conversation. Yeah, so basically what Sangeeta is saying is there needs to be not just legislation, but also structural change. Wen is saying in the chat, we can't run away from the good aspects of plastics, which I think the panel, do you all agree on this? Yeah. We simply have to continue R&D and learn to use the ones that are reusable. So she's giving an example like Econel, which is 100% reusable. And it's a long process. Many stakeholders are involved, government and policymakers, corporate entities, and consumers. So yeah, so like Sangeeta was saying, it will take some time, hopefully not too long. But I mean, personally, I would like to add that yes, there are impacts. We're very eager to actually find a way forward, but there also needs to be a solution that is long-term as well, and that it's not a rush to find a solution that is only temporary. Do we have any more questions? Do you have any questions, panelists? I didn't know. For each other.
No, just adding to that, like I completely agree. It won't be a quick step, but I guess for corporations, I'd rather they take slow steps than they take shortcuts, because seeing an alarming trend of companies greenwashing. I guess a lot of you are very familiar with this. That especially in the fashion companies that start to brand their products as sustainable because their items are recyclable. And you're like, okay, how is this recyclable? Oh, because it's 100% polyester, therefore it is recyclable. Like, excuse me, no, like, are you gonna do it though? Like, or is it just like, oh yeah, it is, we're sustainable, we care, and like, okay, no. Yeah, so I think it's better that small steps are taken than just pure going, yes, we now care and we are definitely part of the solution already. Like that, we all know that that's not true for a lot of like fashion companies.
Yeah. Mel, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking as Hannah was saying that like yeah, the greenwashing not only in fashion but in many industries is pretty quite a bad problem now. And when it comes to like recycling or like if you, I think for the makeup companies, they do like bring back your makeup containers and then we'll recycle them. But if you were to really ask like how do you intend to recycle this, because it's mixed materials, for example, once it's like glass and plastic, you're going to separate it or something, because some makeup containers, they obviously can't be recycled or something. So when you ask them like how, they actually don't have a real solution. And sometimes they even tell you, oh, because we collect it and we incinerate it and it becomes like waste to energy. And so that's kind of recovering energy. And then it's like, oh man, that I could have done that myself, right? So yeah, I think as consumers, we do need to be careful before we start to like happily support certain campaigns or programs, and think about I think deeper into the whole thing. Or even when it came to some shoe brands are producing 100% made from recycled plastic or recycled materials, that their shoes, but the brand as a whole has many issues to look into, not just plastic, the issue of plastic, but also fair wages and things like that. So I think sustainability as a whole is not just about plastic, and it's not just about let's use recycled plastic and they call ourselves sustainable brand. I think the greenwashing goes even further than just like plastic and recycled materials into like sustainability in regards to fair wages or fair trade, fair working conditions and stuff like that. So yeah, I think recently there have been quite a few companies that I'm aware, because they like asked me to review the shoe or something like that. Then I'm like, but I can't bring myself to say okay to this, because I'm not okay with everything else. I'm okay with the R&D and the cool things that you've done with the shoe. So I mean, I want to look at the shoe, but I don't think that I fully support this whole thing. So I think that yeah, greenwashing goes much deeper than just with regards to plastic, sadly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, sustainability is a very complex issue. It's more than just going zero waste or going plastic free, in fact. But if you want to find more about how you can go sustainable, there are different aspects of it. You can always come to the Green Collective. You can find us at, we're actually part of the Delegate Festival. You'll find us in the Home and Gift section, or you can come down to Funan. And you'll find the products from the Eco Statement, Anerd, and Bamboo Straw Girl. So I'm just looking at the time. We are almost up. But I just wanted to summarize. We discussed the good, the bad, the ugly of plastic. And there's no denying that we cannot actually ban plastic, because it has its merits. But in terms of solutions, we talked about the need to reduce our plastic consumption, substituting it for an alternative, but having alternatives that are designed with sustainability in mind. And also, consuming less, which I think has been an issue that a lot of us are concerned about, consuming less. So with that, we welcome you to our booth at the Delegate Virtual Christmas Market. But I would like to say a big thank you to you all who have joined us here. It's almost lunchtime, but I will say a big thank you also to Melissa, Bamboo Straw Girl. Thank you very much. Hannah and Sana of A Nerd Store, and Sangeeta Nair of the Eco Statement. So thank you very much. If the conversation ends here, but we can still continue it online as well. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.